He was the dragon, the ruthless ruler of the city's underworld. Tonight, his father, the true emperor from the east, had come to judge him. The room was frozen in fear. Men worth billions were afraid to breathe. Then she walked in. The shy waitress, the one nobody ever saw. She approached the old emperor, the killer of killers. And when she spoke, it wasn't English. It was a deep, ancient dialect from the rough southern coast of Korea. And with 5 words, she sealed her fate and brought the entire Park Empire to its knees. What did she say?
And who is she?
Stick around. This isn't just a story. It's a blood debt. The restaurant, the palace, was a fortress disguised as heaven. Located on a discreet cobblestone street, its name meant sovereignty, and it treated its clientele as such. Senators dined beside hedge fund titans, and movie stars felt lucky to get a reservation. But the staff, and indeed all of the city, knew who the real sovereign was. Junho Park, the dragon. He owned the building, the block, and half the politicians who ate there. Junho was a man carved from modern granite, wearing a sharp black Mafia suit and a crisp white collared shirt that emphasized his powerful build. His eyes were as cold and dark as the deepest ocean. He was the new generation of power, a Korean mafia boss with a body count. And the palace was his throne room. And then there was Nia. Nia was a ghost in this gilded cage. She was a stunning, 25-year-old African woman, possessing a beauty that she tried desperately to hide. Her uniform was immaculate, a flowing white dress cinched with a red vest, and her hair was pulled back severely. She was the definition of the shy waitress, a background detail in a world of blinding power. She needed this job. The anonymity was her shield. The money, which was excellent, was her escape fund. Tonight, the air in the palace wasn't just tense, it was vibrating. The kitchen was silent, save for the sharp clack of knives. The manager, a perpetually stressed man named Robert, looked pale enough to faint. Even Junho, the Korean mafia boss, who was holding court at his usual table, the one with a clear view of both entrances and a reinforced wall behind it, seemed on edge. He was waiting for his father. Chairman Min-suk Park was not a man. He was a legend, a myth from the old country. He was the supreme leader, a figure of such archaic and brutal power that even his own son, the terrifying Korean mafia boss of the city, was still just a child in his shadow. He had not set foot on American soil in 20 years. His arrival was not a social call. It was an inspection, an audit of blood and loyalty. You, Robert snapped, his finger jabbing at Nia. The private dining room, table 7 tonight. Nia's blood ran cold. The private room? That was reserved for Junho's most sensitive meetings. She had actively avoided it for a year. Me? But Robert, I thought Maya was. Maya, Robert hissed, spilled a drop of wine near Mr. Park's cousin last week. She's cleaning glasses in the basement. You are quiet. You are fast. You do not exist. Do you understand me? You are a pair of hands. Nothing more.
Go.
Nia swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded, her hands trembling so hard she had to clench them behind her back. At 9 p.m., they arrived. The front doors of the palace were closed to the public. Junho Park stood at the entrance, a posture of respect he showed for no one else. 2 black sedans, models that looked more armored than civilian, glided to the curb. Chairman Min-suk Park emerged. He was shorter than his son, perhaps in his late 70s, but he seemed to take up more space. He wore a dark, heavy-wool suit that had been fashionable decades ago. His face was a map of hardship and old-world suspicion, dominated by eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the light. He didn't walk, he glided, his hand resting on a simple gnarled wooden cane. Beside Junho were his top lieutenants. Sangwoo, the snake, a slim, smiling advisor who never blinked, and Daeshik, a man who looked like he'd been built out of spare boulders. They were a portrait of modern mafia power. Chairman Park ignored them all. He walked past his son, giving him only a curt nod, and entered the restaurant. He didn't look at the priceless art or the crystal chandeliers. He simply sniffed the air, as if tasting the restaurant's legitimacy. "He's in a room," Robert whispered to Nia, shoving a silver tray into her hands. "Water, still. No ice, and do not speak unless spoken to." Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. She balanced the tray, the crystal glasses rattling softly. She pushed open the heavy oak door to the private room. The air was thick with smoke and testosterone. Chairman Park was seated at the head of the long table. Junho sat to his right, looking like a prince begging for approval. Sangwoo and Daeshik flanked them. Nia moved to the table, her eyes locked on the polished wood. She poured the water for the chairman first. Her hand was steady, a small miracle. She moved to pour for Junho. "So," Chairman Park said, his voice a low rumble like gravel in a tomb. He wasn't speaking English. He wasn't even speaking proper standard Korean. He was speaking a deep, guttural, countryside dialect, one inflected with the rough history of the coast. He gestured dismissively at the opulent room. "All this. It is yours."
Juno stiffened.
He replied in a cleaner, more academic version of the language, his American accent detectable. "Yes, father. I built it for the family." The chairman's lip curled in a tiny, almost imperceptible sneer. He hated the clean, standard tongue. It was the language of the politicians who stole from them. It was not the language of their people. "You built this," the chairman said in the dialect, "with American money. It is soft, like you." Junho's face tightened. "The times are different, father." "The times do not change," the chairman grunted. "Men do. They become weak." He turned his gaze to his son's lieutenants. "You surround yourself with children." Sangwoo, the snake, smiled his oily smile. "With respect, Chairman Park. Our reach is global. We have interests in." Chairman Park held up a single liver-spotted hand. Silence fell. He had not given Sangwoo permission to speak. The advisor's blood drained from his face. The chairman looked around the table. He seemed deeply, profoundly disappointed. He felt alien, surrounded by men who had forgotten their roots. He pushed his water glass away in disgust. "Water," he muttered in the dialect. Like a child. He looked up, his black eyes landing on Nia as she stood by the wall, waiting to be dismissed. He saw her only as a piece of furniture, contrasting sharply with the environment in her white dress and red vest. He barked at her, not at his son.
"Wine. Red.
One that tastes of the earth, not of smoke and chemicals." Immediately, Nia froze. This was the moment, the pivot point of her entire life. She was supposed to nod, terrified, and fetch Robert. She was supposed to be invisible. But the words he spoke, they were the language of her grandmother, the language of her childhood nightmares and her secret lullabies, the language she hadn't spoken aloud in a decade. Junho, embarrassed, began to translate. "He wants wine. Red. I heard him," Nia said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the cigar smoke like a razor. Junho's head snapped toward her. Sangwoo and Daeshik stared. Nia took one step forward, away from the wall. She was no longer a ghost. She looked directly into the black, merciless eyes of Chairman Min-suk Park. She dipped her head not in a servile bow, but in a gesture of ancient, formal respect. And then, in the same pure, low, rough dialect that the chairman himself had used, she replied. "Good day, Chairman Park." The effect was instantaneous. It was as if a grenade had been rolled silently onto the table. If Nia had pulled a gun, the reaction could not have been more immediate. Daeshik, the muscle, actually flinched, his hand dropping to the weapon beneath his jacket. Sangwoo's slick smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure shock, his mouth hanging open slightly. Junho, the powerful Korean Mafia boss, went pale. His disbelief was absolute. He looked at Nia as if she had suddenly grown a second head. He stared at this shy waitress, this African woman in a white dress and red vest whom he'd barely registered as human, this creature who cleaned his crumbs and heard the impossible. It wasn't just that she spoke the dialect. It was how she spoke it. She didn't speak with the clumsy, hesitant tongue of a student. She spoke it with the terror and the earth that the chairman had just demanded. Her pronunciation was flawless, invoking the narrow, sun-baked coastal villages, the salt of the sea, the blood in the soil. It was a language of secrets, one meant to exclude the outside world, and she spoke it like she was born to it. But it was Chairman Park's reaction that held the room in a vice. The old man had not moved a muscle, but his eyes, which had been dull with disdain, suddenly ignited. They became sharp, focused, and lethal. He stared at Nia, his gaze so intense it was a physical weight, pinning her to the spot. Nia's heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. But she held his gaze. She had stepped off the cliff. There was no going back. She continued in the dialect, her voice steady, respectful, but infused with a strength that belied her trembling hands. "My name is Nia. It is a true honor to serve you tonight." She then added the line that shattered the silence. "I remember the wine that a man of respect likes. A wine from the old earth, one that has not abandoned its roots." It was a direct, breathtaking echo of the chairman's own complaint. She hadn't just understood him. She had agreed with him, and in doing so, had subtly validated his disgust with the soft American room. Junho, fluent in business Korean but a clumsy tourist in his father's dialect, understood enough to know he had just been insulted by his own waitress, and worse, his father had just been flattered by her. "What the hell is this?" Junho snapped in English, his voice a low growl. "Nia, get out." Nia didn't look at him. Her focus was absolute. It was only on the chairman. Chairman Park raised a single wrinkled finger, silencing his son without a glance. Junho's jaw clamped shut, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He had been publicly overridden. The old chairman leaned forward. The silence in the room was so deep Nia could hear the fizz of the candle wicks. He spoke, his voice softer now, but infinitely more dangerous.
"You."
Little 1 inch he studied her face, his eyes narrowing. "Where do you come from?"
"Who taught you to speak like that?"
"This is not the tongue of a waitress. And certainly not one who looks like you." He was testing her. He was asking for her lineage, her city, her family. In their world, this was the only question that mattered. Nia knew she was walking a tightrope over a canyon. She had to give him an answer that was both true and a lie. "I come from here, Chairman," she replied in the dialect. "But my grandmother was from the southern coast. She never spoke a word of English to me. She said the old words had more power. She taught me to respect the men who, like the wine, have not abandoned their roots." The southern coast. The mention hung in the air, thick with a history of blood and iron. It was a place of respect, a heartland of the old ways. The chairman's expression was unreadable. He saw her simple uniform, her clean, unadorned face, and the blazing, terrified intelligence in her eyes. He saw a contradiction that fascinated him. Sangwoo, recovering his composure, decided to intervene. He saw a potential threat, an unknown variable. "Chairman," Sangwoo said, attempting the dialect and failing, his voice sounding thin and weak after Nia's. "She is a servant. She is playing a game. Perhaps she learned a few phrases too." Silence. The chairman roared. The word cracked like a whip. Sangwoo flinched as if struck. Chairman Park's eyes never left Nia. He saw the subtle contempt in her expression as she glanced at Sangwoo. The contempt of a true speaker for a fraud. A slow smile spread across the old chairman's face. It was not a kind smile. It was a smile of discovery, of acquisition. "You," he said to Nia, pointing a finger. "You will bring the wine, the one you choose, and you will pour it." He then looked at his son Junho. "And this child, she will serve my table. Only her, for the rest of the night. Do you understand?" Junho Park, the dragon, the Korean Mafia boss of the city, could only nod. "Yes, father." The chairman waved his hand, dismissing his son and his lieutenants. "But not Nia. Leave me, all of you. I will speak with the girl. I want to know about the wine." The order was a tactical bomb. He had dismissed his own son but kept the waitress. It was a calculated humiliation, a demonstration of absolute power. Junho's face was a mask of cold fury. He stood up. Sangwoo and Daeshik followed, their faces a mixture of confusion and anger. They filed out of the room, leaving the most powerful man in the Mafia alone with the shy waitress. The heavy door clicked shut. Nia was alone with Chairman Min Suk Park. He gestured to the chair beside him, his son's chair. "Sit," he commanded in the dialect. Her legs felt like water, but she did as he said. She sat at the table, a servant in the seat of power. The old chairman leaned back, his ancient eyes scrutinizing her, peeling back her layers. "The girl from the coast," he mused, his voice a predator's purr. "It is a place of strong secrets. And you, Nia, you are full of them. Now tell me, who are you?" Outside that door, Junho Park was pacing, his controlled fury radiating in waves. He was humiliated, confused, and dangerously intrigued. His father had kicked him out of his own inner sanctum in favor of a waitress. Inside, the silence was a different animal. It was the patient, ancient silence of a predator. "I am, as I said, Chairman," she replied in a deep dialect. "My name is Nia. My grandmother was Angelica, from the hills overlooking the sea." She was feeding him a curated truth. "Angelica?" The chairman mused, tapping his cane on the marble floor. "I knew many from that region. The Lee family. I do not recall an Angelica. Was she a farmer? A fisherwoman?" "They were nothing, Chairman," Nia said, lowering her eyes. "They were not friends of ours, they were just people. She fled to America after the war with nothing. She died when I was young. And she taught you the tongue of kings," the chairman finished, his gaze sharp. "She taught you respect, a lesson my son, with all his tall buildings and expensive suits, seems to have forgotten. He was using her. He was already using her as a weapon against his own son." Nia understood this. It was the first move in his own game. "She taught me that roots are all that matter," Nia said softly. She said, "A tree with no roots is just a piece of wood waiting to be burned." The chairman's eyes flared. That was an old proverb. A very old proverb. He hadn't heard it in 30 years. A sudden cold suspicion entered his mind. He looked at her face. Really looked at her, searching past her youth and her simple features. He was looking for a ghost. "Your eyes," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "What was your grandmother's family name before she was married?" Nia's heart stopped. This was the question, the one that could get her killed. I do not know, Chairman." She never spoke of it. She said it was a name of sorrow. The chairman stared at her for a long, agonizing minute. He saw the flicker in her pulse, the way her hand, resting on the table, was perfectly still, too still. He suspected she was lying, but he was captivated by the quality of the lie. "Go," he said abruptly, his voice hard again. "Bring me the wine, the one you promised, the one with roots." Nia stood. She gave him the same respectful nod. "Yes, Chairman." She walked to the door, her spine rigid. As her hand touched the brass handle, he spoke again. "From now on, little one, you do not serve anyone else. You are not a waitress. You are my translator. My son's American tongue is an insult. You will be my voice." She nodded, not daring to speak, and slipped out the door. The hallway felt like a war zone. Junho was there, as she knew he would be. Sangwoo and Daeshik were 10 feet behind him. Junho grabbed her arm. His grip was steel. He spun her around and slammed her against the flocked wallpaper. His handsome face was dark with a rage that was part jealousy, part suspicion. "What game are you playing?" he hissed in English.
"Who are you?"
"What did you say to him?" Nia had faced the emperor. His son, for all his power as the Korean Mafia boss, was just a shadow. She looked at the hand on her arm. Then she looked into his cold, dark eyes. The shy waitress was gone. The woman who had just survived the chairman was in her place. "Take your hand off me, Mr. Park," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it was not soft. Junho was so surprised, his grip loosened for a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. She wrenched her arm free. "I am playing no game," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am here to serve. Your father asked me a question." I answered it in a language he respects. She let the barb hang in the air. You are a nobody, Sangwoo sneered, stepping forward. A little rat. What did you tell him? Nia turned her gaze on Sangwoo. I told him the truth, advisor. Perhaps you should try it. He might find it refreshing. Sangwoo's face went purple. Daeshik took a step, his hand balling into a fist. Enough.
Juno commanded.
He was looking at Nia with new, confused eyes. The fear he expected to see in her was gone. It had been replaced by something else.
Contempt.
What did he want? Junho demanded, his voice strained. He wants wine, Nia said, smoothing her red vest. And I am to be his translator. He finds your Korean lacking. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked down the hall toward the wine cellar, her steps measured and confident. She left Junho Park standing in the hallway of his own restaurant, his two most dangerous men at his side, all of them staring after her, completely and utterly thrown off their axis. Junho watched her go, his mind racing.
Who was she?
A spy from another family? A plant? A simple waitress who just happened to know a near-dead dialect? No, he didn't believe in coincidences. He turned to Sangwoo. His voice was ice. Find out who she is. I don't mean her name. I mean who she is. I want to know where she was born. I want to know the name of her grandmother's dog. I want to know what she ate for breakfast. I want everything.
Now.
Sangwoo, the snake, nodded. Consider it done, boss. But as Sangwoo walked away, a new thought entered his mind. The chairman had taken a liking to this girl. The chairman was old world. If this girl was special, she could become a new power center, a threat to his position. Sangwoo decided he wouldn't just find out who she was. He would find a way to use her, or, if necessary, a way to remove her. For the next 3 days, the palace was a court in flux. The power dynamic had been shattered. Nia was no longer just a waitress. She was the chairman's shadow. She was at Min-suk's side from the moment he woke until he retired. She sat in on meetings with Junho's captains, a silent figure standing behind the old man's chair, translating Junho's modern business speak and quarterly projections into the dialect of blood, territory, and honor. And she translated the chairman's replies. My father says, she would state to a room of hardened killers, her voice calm, that your logistical efficiencies sound like the excuses of a man who is afraid to get his hands dirty. He asks if you have forgotten that loyalty is not found on a balance sheet. Junho's men began to despise her. She was the vessel for the old chairman's criticisms, and her perfect, respectful delivery made it all the more infuriating. Sangwoo watched her with venomous intensity. His investigation into her identity yielded nothing. The woman had no past, no family, no social media, no credit history before 2 years ago. She was a ghost. Junho, however, was a different story. His fury had curdled into a complex, dangerous obsession. He watched her. He watched the way she moved, the way she spoke to his father with a respect she never afforded him. He watched the way his father, in turn, seemed to relax around her, speaking of his seaside home, asking her questions about obscure traditions. Junho found himself listening to the sound of the dialect. It was a language he'd always associated with his father's disapproval, but from her lips, it sounded different, ancient, melodic. He cornered her on the 3rd night. His father had finally retired. Nia was in the small staff room, unpinning her hair. She thought she was alone. The door locked. She spun around. Junho Park stood there, leaning against the doorframe, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened. The mask of the Korean Mafia boss was gone. He looked like the street-raised brawler he truly was. The show's over, he said, his voice low. No audience, no father, just you and me. Nia's hand instinctively went to the locker behind her where she kept her bag. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? He took a step closer. The room was tiny. You've had fun, haven't you? Making me look like a fool in my own house, humiliating me in front of my men. I have done only as your father commanded, Nia said, lifting her chin. My father is an old man, obsessed with the past, Junho growled, taking another step. He was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from him. He sees a pretty girl who can speak his dead language, and he's enchanted. But I'm not. I see a liar. What do you want, Nia? I want the truth. Sang-woo's investigation came up with nothing. Nia King doesn't exist. So, I did my own digging. Nia's blood chilled. I didn't look for King, he said, his dark eyes pinning her. I looked for Angelica from the coast. I looked for women who fled Korea in the late 90s who had a child. And I found a name that was supposed to be erased, a name that hasn't been spoken in my family's presence for 30 years.
He was so close now, he was almost whispering.
I found a record of a woman named Angelica Lee who entered America through a charity organization, claiming her husband had died in a boating accident. She died in poverty, but her grandchild survived. Nia was barely breathing. The name was out.
Lee.
That name means nothing to me, she lied, but her voice wavered. Liar, he whispered. I know that name. Every mafioso in the country knows that name. The Lee family. The only family that ever made my father's generation tremble. The family my father's associates wiped out. Annihilated. Every man, woman, and child. Or so they thought. He reached out and with a single finger tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Her skin burned at his touch. They missed one, he breathed, his eyes tracing her features. They missed a baby girl. And now I look at you, and I see it. You don't have your grandmother's eyes, do you? You have your grandfather's eyes. Grandfather Lee, my father's greatest rival. Nia's facade crumbled. The terror, the grief, and the white-hot rage of a lifetime flooded her face. My full name, she spat, her voice thick with venom, is Nia Lee. And your father is a butcher. He murdered my grandfather. He murdered my uncles. He ordered the death of my mother while I was in her womb. He stole our land, our honor, and our name. Jun-ho staggered back, as if she had physically pushed him. The confirmation hit him like a freight train. This wasn't a spy. This wasn't a game. This was a blood feud. You're here for revenge, he stated. It wasn't a question. You're here to kill him. He deserves to die, she whispered, tears of fury tracing paths down her cheeks. He deserves to die for what he did to my family. So the dialect, the shy act, it was all a trap to get close to him. It was the only weapon I have left, she cried, her voice breaking. The language he used to steal my past is the language I will use to end his future. Jun-ho stared at her, his mind a whirlwind. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. And she was, by every law of their world, his sworn enemy. He was bound by honor to kill her where she stood. His father's life was on the line. But as he looked at her, trembling with a rage that matched his own, he didn't feel duty. He felt admiration. And something else, a dark, possessive pull that he had been fighting for 3 days. He too had lived his whole life in his father's shadow, suffocated by the old ways he didn't fully understand. And here was a woman who had mastered those ways, not to serve them, but to destroy them. He will find you out, Jun-ho said, his voice raw. He's not a fool. He's already suspicious. He's looking for the ghost. He'll put it together. Let him, Nia said, wiping her face. I'm not afraid of him. You should be. Jun-ho took a step, closing the distance again. The energy between them was electric, a mix of hatred and a volatile, undeniable attraction. He's my father. My duty is to him. I should walk out that door and tell him there is a Lee in his house and let him put a bullet in your head. Then do it, she challenged, her dark eyes flashing. Or are you, like he said, too soft? That was the spark. Jun-ho moved so fast, she didn't have time to react. He didn't hit her. He pressed her back against the lockers, one hand bracing the metal by her head, his body caging hers. His face was inches from hers. Don't, he whispered, ever call me soft. What's the plan, Nia Lee? He murmured. A knife? Poison in his wine? You're the one serving him after all. You don't want to know, she breathed. I think I do, his gaze dropped to her mouth. Because I have a problem. Half of me knows I have to kill you. and the other half wants to watch you succeed. Before she could process the treason in his words, the door to the staff room rattled. A key slid into the lock. Junho and Nia sprang apart, their expressions shifting to cold neutrality. The door opened. Sangwoo stood there, a thin, triumphant smile on his face. He held a small manila envelope in his hand. "My apologies, boss," Sangwoo said, his eyes sliding from Junho to Nia and back, noting their proximity. "But my associate overseas finally came through. I thought you'd want to see this immediately." Sangwoo's smile widened.
He tapped the envelope.
"It's funny what you find when you stop looking for king and start looking for ghosts. I found an old certificate for one Nia Lee and a photograph of her grandfather, Grandfather Lee." He pulled the old black and white photo from the envelope and held it up. Then he looked at Nia. "The resemblance is uncanny." Sangwoo's eyes met Junho's. The challenge was clear. Sangwoo had found the truth, too. "So, boss," Sangwoo said, his voice dripping with false loyalty. "What do we do with the last of the Lees?" The staff room, which had just been a crucible of confession, instantly became an executioner's block. Junho Park's face was unreadable. He had been caught. Caught confronting his enemy. Caught hesitating. Sangwoo knew he had his boss in a corner. His loyalty was never to Junho, but to the old code. And the code demanded only one thing for a Lee who threatened a Park: death. "She's a spy," Sangwoo stated. "She played you. She played your father. She is here to murder the chairman." Nia stood her ground, her mind racing. Junho's reaction was everything. Would he save her? Would he condemn her? Junho looked at Sangwoo, his eyes as cold as a winter tomb. "You did good work, Sangwoo. You found the rat." Nia's heart plummeted.
Rat.
He was siding with his advisor. "Of course, boss," Sangwoo said, puffing up. "I'll have Daeshik take her to the river. No one will ever know." "You won't have Daeshik do anything," Junho said slowly, pulling his suit jacket back on. He was the Korean Mafia boss again. "You will not breathe a word of this. Not to Daeshik, and especially not to my father." Sangwoo's smile faltered. "Boss, with respect.
She's a Lee.
It's a blood feud. It's my decision."
Junho's necked.
"This is my city, my restaurant, and my father. I will handle this." "Handle her?" Sangwoo was incredulous. "Junho, she's a threat. The chairman's life is my concern." Silence.
Junho roared.
He grabbed Sangwoo by the lapels, slamming him against the lockers. "You listen to me. You are loyal to me, not to my father, not to the old ways. I give the orders. You will go back out there. You will forget this photograph, and you will forget her name. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I will personally cut your tongue out. Am I understood?" Sangwoo, his face pale, nodded.
"Yes."
"Yes, boss." "Good. Now get out. I'm handling her." Junho released him. Sangwoo, humiliated and seething, gave Nia one last venomous look before backing out of the room and closing the door. "Why?" Nia breathed. "You should have let him take me." "I told you," Junho said, turning to her. "Half of me wants to watch you succeed." "You're committing treason," she whispered, "against your own father." "My father's world is dying," Junho said. "He sits in his villa, judging me for being soft while I run a global empire. He talks of honor and blood, but he's just a man clinging to a past that's gone. This blood feud, the massacre, I grew up hearing about it. The story was that your grandfather betrayed my father, and my father acted. He murdered them. He wiped out an entire line." Nia spat. "Do you know what that's like? To be the son of that? To know your entire life, your wealth, this restaurant, is built on the bones of children? I have lived with that blood debt my entire life. And then you walk in. The one ghost he missed. You're not just here for your revenge, Nia. You're here for mine." Nia was stunned. "Your revenge?" "I hate him," Junho whispered. "I hate what he represents. I hate that he will never see me as anything but a soft American. By protecting you, I'm finally choosing my own side." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his gun. "A blood debt must be paid in blood. You can't kill him. You're a waitress, and he's surrounded by guards. But he looked at her, his face a mask of grim resolve. I can. You would kill your own father? My father died 30 years ago in that massacre, Junho said. The man upstairs is just a monster. You came here to end the park line.
Fine.
Let's end it together tonight. The plan was forged in the cold light of the staff room. They would go to the chairman's penthouse at the hotel. Junho would use Nia as the excuse to gain entry, claiming a sensitive translation matter. Once inside, they would end it. The ride to the hotel was silent. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows of Junho's sedan. They arrived at the penthouse suite. It was a palace in the sky, overlooking the dark city. Chairman Min-suk Park sat in a high-backed chair by the window. His 2 bodyguards flanked the door. Father, Junho said, bowing his head. I have asked Nia to join us. I have a sensitive proposal. One I felt more comfortable discussing in our true tongue. The chairman grunted, his eyes finding Nia. So the little bird has become a parrot. Let them in. The guards closed the heavy oak door. They were alone. Father, Junho began, his voice steady. We have a problem. A matter of a blood debt that must be settled. The chairman's eyes narrowed. What debt? The debt of the Lees, Junho said, his hand moving slowly inside his jacket. The chairman's body went rigid. He knew the scent of a trap. What did you say? He found her, father, Junho said, his voice cold. The one you missed. The ghost. Nia stepped forward into the lamplight. My name, she said, her voice like ice, is Nia Lee, granddaughter of the man you butchered. The old chairman's face showed a flicker of genuine shock. He looked at his son. You bring this enemy into my home? You side with her? She's here for justice, Junho said, and he drew his gun, pointing it directly at his father's heart. Chairman Park looked at the gun. He looked at his son's face. He looked at Nia's. And then he began to laugh. It was a dry, rasping sound. Justice, he spat. You children. You come in here with your American guns and your American ideas of justice. You know nothing. I know you killed my family, Nia screamed. I did not, the chairman roared, slamming his cane down. I did not give the order for the massacre. Liar, she cried. It was his father, the chairman bellowed, pointing a shaking finger at the door, towards where Sang-woo would be. Sang-woo's father. He was my advisor. He was the one who feared your grandfather. He poisoned my ear, brought me whispers of treason. I sanctioned a removal, a single shot, the old way, a death with honor for my brother. But he was a butcher. He used my name and took his own men. He wanted annihilation. By the time I learned the truth, the lie was already legend. I was the emperor, and my power was built on his sin. I had to wear his crown of infamy. He looked at Nia, his eyes full of pain. I saw it the first night. Why do you think I kept you so close? Your eyes? You have his eyes. I didn't see a ghost. I saw my brother. I knew God had sent you. Suddenly, the door burst open. It was Sang-woo, his face triumphant, flanked by 2 of his own men. He had been listening. So it is true, Sang-woo shouted, pulling his own gun. The dragon and the Lee conspiring to kill the chairman. I knew you were soft, Junho. The standoff was absolute. Sang-woo's gun was trained on Junho. Junho's gun was wavering. Chairman Min-suk Park looked at his son, the traitor. He looked at Nia. And then he looked at Sang-woo, the son of the man who had truly destroyed them all. The old king's face hardened. He had made his choice. So, the chairman barked in the dialect. Sang-woo flinched, his eyes flicking to the old man for a split second. That second was enough.
Junho fired.
The shot took Sang-woo in the chest. Chaos erupted. Sang-woo's men opened fire. The chairman, moving with impossible speed for his age, threw himself in front of Nia. When the smoke cleared, Sang-woo and his men were down. Junho stood amidst the carnage, smoke rising from his barrel. But on the floor, Chairman Park lay gasping, a red stain spreading on his chest. Nia fell to her knees beside him. The man she had hated her whole life had taken the bullet meant for her. The debt, the chairman wheezed, looking at Nia. Is it paid? Nia took his hand, her tears falling on his rough skin. It is paid, chairman. He looked at his son. You are not soft, he whispered. And then the old emperor was gone. The door opened. The two loyal bodyguards saw the carnage. They saw their dead chairman. They saw Sang-woo, the traitor, dead. Jun-ho didn't wait. He spoke, and the voice that came out was absolute. He commanded in the dialect. Sang-woo was a traitor. He came to kill the chairman. My father fought like a lion. He saved us, he gestured to Nia. She witnessed it. She saved the family's honor. It was the perfect truth wrapped in a lie. It honored his father and protected their future. The guards bowed their heads. We serve you, boss. After giving the order to clean the mess, Jun-ho took Nia's hand. They walked out of the hotel as the first gray light of dawn broke over the city. It's over, she whispered. The feud is, he replied. My father paid the debt. You're free, Nia. She looked at the skyline, then at him. The shy waitress was a ghost. My home isn't in the past, she said. It's here. Jun-ho saw his future. My father wanted a queen, he said, pulling her close. He spoke of a new family, an alliance, the park and the Lee united. He kissed her, sealing the new dynasty. The next night, the palace had a new sovereign. Jun-ho Park, the Korean Mafia boss, sat at table 1. And at his right hand, in the seat of power, sat his queen, wearing a white dress and red vest, a reminder of where she came from. And just like that, the shy waitress proved that the old words have power. She didn't just get revenge. She rewrote history.